Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we get into as much about what made playing that game special or memorable as we will dive into the context of how and when this game made its impact for our guest. It's a podcast about what makes video games special to different people. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I share today, whether it be an upcoming show or our Patreon where you can find more bonus video game podcasts and coverage and stuff like that, any of the things we plug will be in a link in the show notes. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening on a typical podcast app, if you scroll down, you'll be able to find those links in a nice, neat, organized place. Without further ado, that's going to do it for the housekeeping. We'll introduce our guest for today's episode, so please welcome actor, improviser, and filmmaker Dhruv Uday Singh. Dhruv, welcome.
Thank you for having me. What's going on?
Hey, so many things and also nothing at all. Isn't it funny how it's always that?
I like that. That's a good autobiography title.
Yeah, it's a great answer for someone who's like, I don't know what to actually say. Here's what I'll say is basically nonsense.
Yeah.
But dude, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. You and I know each other, how I know the majority of the guests on this podcast, through the Los Angeles improv community. And when I look back and just reach into the deepest parts of my brain to remember how we became familiar, I'm almost positive that outside of just like watching you perform at the theater before we would have met, my instinct is to say that we met because you subbed coaching for Mr. Jake Sprague on the interns for us a couple times.
That is correct. Correct. You were on a team of all work-study student interns at UCB, unpaid employees of the theater at the time during a time when they didn't pay anyone, including performers. And I think I came to a really cool, I want to say mid-century modern house up in like the hills of, I don't know, Hollywood maybe, or a little further east.
It was in the like sort of Los Feliz Hills, and it was Sam Horowitz's house that this was. I never went to a party there, but it was apparently some fabled old party house in like the greater comedy community. And yeah, it was this really nice place with like 5 bedrooms that we had to go up winding streets to even get to. And that's where, for some reason, we would practice Saturday mornings back in the day.
That's right. There was it was called Hollywood. I forget who. I know all those people who used to have parties there. I didn't go. Yes. I was also the generation just after that, maybe, or maybe those parties were happening, but I was too new in the scene and young to be invited to them. But that was the place. Yeah.
Yes. So both of us are familiar with these parties, but just never made our way up there except for practice. But yeah,
but you were killing it. You were killing it from the jump, man. I remember being like, this dude is very funny. I mean, the team had a lot of really big hitters, but you were great.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it was a great opportunity to, get to know you better. And just like, that was my first team that I ever consistently performed with. So it was fun for all of us to sort of like grow together and just get a lot of experience. But I think after that point, you and I became a little more familiar, and we would just, it's kind of the classic case of seeing people around for years and years, whether it's at parties or hangs after shows or doing shows together. So that pretty much catches us up to how we know each other today. But for you, Dhruv, what do you want to share about yourself with the listener today? Do you want to fill in any additional context or tell us about yourself?
Is this a place for plugs, or do you mean just my biographical history?
Let's go with, if you want to share anything about who you are and biographically or what you do, you can. And then also, let's finish that off with some plugs.
Okay. Let's see. I don't know. I grew up, I guess it's relevant to later when I talk about the game a little bit. I grew up in Mumbai in India. It was called Bombay then when I was growing up. And when I was almost 18, moved out here for college to Los Angeles, where I live now most of the year. And this video game that we'll get into later takes, it has its place in my memory during that freshman year of college. I don't know. I perform a lot live. I'm an actor by profession and writer and director. And Yeah, I don't know. I think that's about it.
That filled in everything I could have ever asked for.
Great.
Thank you. And is there something, whether it's a social media account or like an upcoming show that you feel like plugging today?
Yeah, sure. You can watch me right now on The Neighborhood, which is the CBS show that'll be coming to the end after this last season. But something I am very excited about, I'm not sure when this will air, but it'll probably be before this show. But on May 22nd of this year, I have a live show at the UCB Theater in Los Angeles that I'm very excited about called Deepak Chopra's Quantum Manifestation Experience.
Yes.
I play this Deepak Chopra character, but it'll also be there'll be guided meditations and all kinds of spiritual stuff, but there'll also be I have a crack squad of incredible improvisers, and we'll be getting audience members to tell us their deepest dreams they want to manifest, and then we'll have them manifested live on stage to see what it would be like if they actually came to fruition. We got Rekha Shankar, who's a big Dropout star, Alex Fernie, Susie Barrett. It's a real crack squad, and I would love if you came out, if you're listening to this, May 22nd at the UCB Theater.
Incredible. I mean, I'll definitely put the best thing about that is I can put a link to the tickets in the show notes.
Oh, perfect.
How about that?
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible. I've seen you perform this character before. The most recently, and maybe this was the only time, was at when you were hosting Herald Night within the last few months, I want to say. Yes. You had done it. I don't know if that was for a separate edition of the show or just a way you were using that character for something else, but I have seen this and it's wonderful.
Thank you. It was to promote the show, but then we had to cancel the show because of the LA fires. It was right on around that weekend when all that went down. So now it's been moved to May, when things are a little more settled in the city. I
quite literally last night, to date this episode, I did go to a concert that I was supposed to go to about a week after the fires had occurred too. So it looks like we're all getting back to these things that we had planned to do, events that were supposed to be in January or so.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
And Dhruv, would it surprise you to know at all that it was in fact a video game concert?
Was it?
And I promise I have so much more going on than that, but this is exactly what it was. I have to be truthful.
Video game themes, music?
It was for a particular game that they played like the whole suite of music for it. And then like they previewed, they did a song from an upcoming game from the same studio that was a little surprise.
This is cool. Damn. I'll be honest. I'm not as plugged into even the game subculture, which I'll get into why when we talk about this game, because it was a pivotal reason why. So I didn't even realize that was a thing. Music concerts for games. It's
I want, as much as I want to be like, I don't really do that thing sort of often. I have been to a video game concert before. And so I can't even pretend like it's not something I enjoy, but they'll do that. But it's, until recently, wasn't something I knew that they did at all. But it was at the Fonda, if you've ever been to that venue before.
Yep.
Pretty cool place. But anyway, I jumped on to add that detail after you were, plugging your show. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. We are pretty soon going to get into your general history with video games, but before we do, will you introduce what you brought on for the main event later and Call Me By Your Game?
Yep, I've brought the game Jak II, which is, I played originally on PlayStation. It might be on other consoles now, but Jak II.
I can't wait. I think I maybe mentioned this when we first had our conversation where this came up, and then I suddenly was so ravenously like, Dhruv, I gotta get you to tell this story on the podcast. This is kind of why I do it. But you are completing the Jak trilogy for us, so the Jak and Daxter trilogy.
No way. Wait, who else has done the Jak games?
So I believe it was like episode 3. Edgar Montplaisir came on to talk about the original Jak and Daxter. And then over the summer of, I want to say 21 or maybe it was 22, Artoon Nazareth came on to talk about Jak III. So you are truly finally giving us the meat of our sandwich here.
Wow. Okay, that's impressive. I got to go listen to those episodes now because I want to hear what they have to say.
They're pretty fun. They're a lot of brother stuff in both episodes, coincidentally. Anyway, so I'm excited to get into this, on the main event after our break later. But when it comes to, your earliest memories of video games, do you remember, like, what comes to mind? Is it seeing something? Is it playing something, watching someone else?
Yeah, the first excuse me, game like console I ever played on. This will both date me specifically and place me in time, in space specifically. There was a console called the Little Master, which was an 8-bit, like I think an SNES ripoff maybe in India, because you didn't get a lot of like when I was growing up there. It's too complicated to go into the history of it, but let's just say the borders were sort of closed in terms of commerce. You had a lot of like locally made stuff, but you couldn't import a lot of shit until about like the early 90s. So like even Kit Kat bars and stuff like that, you would have to like go to a store that specifically smuggled shit and pay way more to have American candy, right? So there was this little console called the Little Master, and I remember playing, I think it was Mario, or it might have been like a Mario clone. That kind of was the same Mario bones, but a different little character. That's my first memory of video games, of playing that. Besides like arcades, playing in arcades.
Yes. Yeah. So was the Little Master, is it something your family had at home, or did like a family member have it?
Yeah, we had one. I think my dad or mom got it for me to play. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. For the arcade stuff that you were starting to get into though, what was the arcade culture like there? Because it was obviously I know I've heard a lot from past guests about what it was like in the United States or even in Japan, but I wouldn't be familiar with what it would have been like when you were growing up there.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, I got into that a little later. I think we weren't really like allowed to go to arcade, until I was somewhat older. But I think it was probably similar, like the same, pinball machines and Street Fighter and stuff like that.
Yes,
that's something I did. I did get into playing on my PC, like my family's computer, after like playing Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is still, I think, my favorite game. I've got a little. You can't see it from here, but there's a Street Fighter art thing I have up on my wall still because of the nostalgia value of it. Yeah, I played a lot on my computer, I guess, and then I'm an only child, and I was kind of I am still like a nerd about just like alone time. I'm a big, and so I played like every version of game you can kind of play on your PC by yourself, including text-based games. Those like DOS games where it's like you are wake up in a room. Where do you go? And you look around and shit. Like I don't know. Some of them I'm sure were incredible and well-written stories, but sometimes it was like watching paint dry. But I would still play that shit.
Yeah.
There's
some. Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say there's something about being a kid when you have like I don't know if it's like your free time is so precious or you have a limited amount of like things to occupy your free time, but you'll really give. This is kind of a recurring theme on the show. People have given like bad games, like books that are boring, whatever it is, TV shows, time because it's what they have. And so you'll really just give it a fair shot, whether or not looking back years later, it was actually, I guess, you would even enjoy it presently.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a big part of that is we are in an era of such abundance of choice that there's that thing called the paradox of choice. But when you have too much, you just end up either not picking anything, which I can definitely do when you look at 500 streaming services and try to decide what to watch, right? Or you end up like it's a lot easier to watch 8 hours of garbage reality TV than 1 2-hour masterpiece of cinema.
Absolutely.
It's just like so I feel like that's in those days, just when you were limited in what you could do, at least for me. I'd let anything occupy my time, including games that weren't really that great.
Yeah, it's very relatable. I love hearing you two talk about Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 2 Turbo. When you look back at that game, what do you remember what it was that captured you about it or what you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I think I really appreciated the nuanced depiction of different cultures. I'm totally kidding.
I was going to say, that's the most generous description I've ever heard of it.
It's the least nuanced description. Deliberately. It's an insane amount of caricatures. But I think what I liked was just, if you're a boy with this like fight kind of, it's a fighter, it's a bunch of, I liked all the special skills and shit. I liked that there was quote unquote secrets you could learn in terms of learning combos. I enjoyed the progression of. I think it was also just a well-built game, from at least from my limited view of what games were and are still, because I'm not necessarily a gamer. I like it felt like a well-made game where it did increase difficulty as you went ahead, and the arcade mode. I liked the settings of it. I liked the different villains.
Yeah.
I liked how each character had its own. Was really not just its own design, but had their own particular special moves and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Did you have like your character that you would like your go-to?
Yeah, I started figuring out, if you play a game enough, you can start to figure out the cheats, even though they're not technically cheats. So I'd play Blanca. I used to initially just play Ryu like everybody, or I think you could play Evil Ryu in Raider mods or something like that. And because I could figure out the combo. But then Blanca, who's the green monster creature, I'm not sure what. But I figured out a way that if you do his special move where he turns into a ball and he's just defensive, and you do that a bunch, you can beat any villain if you time it right. And so I would just do that a lot and then finish the game.
Gotcha. That's nuts. Yeah. And you said that, like, I know you played that on your PC that you were describing, but did you discover that in the arcades or out with friends?
Yeah, I think I discovered it out in arcades as I got older. Yeah, because there were other versions of it. Yeah, gotcha. And I have, recently, I can get into this later, but I did buy a PlayStation 5, whatever the latest one is.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I should, now there's been enough time passed since the fateful Jak II story, which I'll tell. I should have a console and indulge my inner child a little bit and play with it. And I did buy the new Street Fighter.
Yes.
That's the latest one. And I played it only once because I don't know. Maybe I've lost the gaming gene or something, but I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, it absolutely could be. Some people would look at that as a good thing of like, well, you'll still continue to have, your time or not make it a part of your personality like I've done. I love hearing that though. When you look back to, as you've been talking about this PC that you had growing up, are there any other standout experiences that you remember from that?
In terms of games?
Yes.
I mean, Doom, when Doom came out, the famous IDDQD cheat code where you could just walk through, kill everybody and stuff like that. I think I played that when I was a kid. Probably wasn't allowed to. I did have, so again, I grew up in India, and I also grew up in an era before, when the internet was very young, infant.
Yes.
So you'd buy games on CDs and stuff. In Bombay, where I grew up, there was a street called Lamington Road. There still is the street, but especially then it was filled with stalls where people would sell pirated software.
All right.
Games. So like racks and racks of CDs that were pirated, and you never knew what you'd get. So you'd buy a software CD. It would be 80 different programs on it.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? You were buying that. Some of them were junk. Some of them were you'd buy just so that Photoshop was on it or whatever.
Yeah.
I know I'm not advocating for piracy, but whatever we did. This was assuming
it was the reality.
It was the reality. So once I bought this game CD, and it was 90 games on it, and some of them were just junk and solitaire, just bullshit, and some were actually good games. And this friend of mine, Siddharth, and we were at his place playing. Everyone had one computer in their house, a family computer, and we put in the CD, and we found this new game on there called Knights of Centaur, I think it was, and installed it, being this will be fun. And then we opened it up, and it's an RPG. And his dad was out in the living room as we were playing it. And it was one of those RPGs where I think it's called an RPG, right? When you just, it's a character who walks around, and that's a role playing game. I'm pretty sure.
Definitely can be. Oh yeah.
It's a 2D overhead view, and you're just walking around. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, so sounds like a Final Fantasy or something like that.
Yes, it's. Okay. We didn't realize it was basically a Final Fantasy-esque game, but very different, because you walked into one room, and then suddenly the screen was filled with hentai porn. Because it was a sex game, and we must have been 11 or 12 or something. Both of us jumped up and tried to cover the monitor because his dad was right outside as we tried to hit Control Alt Delete to restart the PC.
Yes,
it was wild. So sometimes you bought those CDs and there would be adult games on there.
Yes,
or weird shit on there. Yeah.
What a roll of the dice that has to be, just clicking on basically any program, especially one that just sounds like the most normal fantasy RPG.
Yeah, exactly. I'm making it sound like I was disappointed that was the case. Later on, I played the full game, obviously, because I was
oh my gosh,
boy.
but just in the context of like being in your friend's living room with his parent in the other room.
Exactly.
Not as great. I'm just imagining you being like, okay, obviously getting rid of this now, but I'm gonna bookmark that one in my brain.
Exactly.
Incredible.
Exactly. And then the other games we played a lot were like, especially because you could play it with friends, was Cricket 97, Cricket 98, which are basically like here people play MLB or NFL games, Madden. There were cricket ones that were popular in India.
That's incredible.
Cricket 97 was the one that stood out because it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Amazing. I know you talked about this this PC, the Little Master, which is easily the greatest name for a console I've ever heard. Did you ever own a different console? And if you didn't, did you ever play one outside of your home that you were interested in?
When I was a kid, no, I didn't own a console. I had a Game Boy when that was out. Played with a Game Boy a little bit. Yeah, enjoyed it, but I don't know.
Not like it wasn't an experience that like left a crazy impact for you.
Yeah, it's just probably nostalgia value. When the first, again, man, I sound like this is all. Everyone's getting older, so whatever. But everyone ages. But when the first Nokia phone came out, there was a Snake game on there. Played the fuck out of that all the time. Yeah. That was an addiction because that was the first instance of probably phone addiction before smartphones were out. Just playing Snake on
totally.
my Nokia.
Such a simple game that you can just engage with or dissociate by playing for as long as you really can survive, I guess, in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Exactly.
I know we've got like the story that we're saving for the main event later. Outside of these experiences, or maybe since after college, have you played something or seen a game that you've been intrigued by? I know we just had the disappointment with the PS5, maybe not hitting with the new Street Fighter, but yeah, has anything like caught your eye that you've been intrigued to try or just curious about?
For sure. I mean, even the new Street Fighter isn't bad. It's actually probably really good. It's just not. I think it has because of that college experience. I'll talk about my I don't know, cognitive association with games has changed to be cautionary. I'm very cautious about letting myself get swept in. I even like installed LA Noire because I heard that was I'm a big movie nerd. I love old movies and noirs and stuff. I played it for like 20 minutes and I was like, I don't think I could do this anymore. It's just like, it's good, but it's just, I've lost the patience of it, or I don't know what. I have been very curious about that when everyone was playing Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh yeah.
That seemed like something I would be into. Baldur's Gate 3, I've heard, is an amazing fantasy. So I've been very intrigued, but I've probably purposefully kept myself away from it because I worry I will lose all sense of perspective and just play the shit out of it for hours. You know?
And I think those two games you named are not only considered by many to be just absolute masterpieces, but your instincts are correct. I think those are games you could just lose yourself in for I don't know 100 hours of gameplay, maybe more. Red Dead, you can just go play poker all day if you want. I've heard.
Yeah, I know. And look, I like poker. I do play poker on my phone sometimes, but not for money, fake money, because I can't afford, I'm not going to actually gamble. But like, I like that. I like poker. I also like poker because it's social, so I play actual poker games with friends, and that I enjoy a lot because it's a perfect hybrid of math and acting.
Yes.
Bluffing. But I think what it is when you are a writer or an actor or anything in this profession, but especially if you're a writer or something, you've signed up for a life of forever having homework every day. Yes. So no free time it is free time. You have to carve it out. But also in all my free time, some part of my brain is always like, I could be working on my shit. Mm-hmm. It's hard not to have that.
Yes.
And so I think there's a heavy guilt now associated with getting lost for 100 hours, even if it's and I want to play it because the storytelling in games these days is reputed to be better than most of cinema right now, which I'm like, I want to be part of that, but I'm worried about it also.
Yeah. I get it though. And I'll let you know, as someone who, is in it following, similar pursuits as you, but that still plays a lot of video games, that guilt doesn't go away. You still feel it a little bit. I will say though, I have found ways to like sort of manage that and make it work for me. But like, yeah, it comes a lot. I think the solution for me and other people who have been able to do it is just time management as best as you can. And it's part of where my type A personality of scheduling so much stuff or just being good at using my calendar really helps. But it is a slippery slope, that's for sure.
You're also smart. People in our line of work are also guys like you, like Iffy, Waterway, like are smart about making it part of what they like doing a podcast like this.
Sure,
you're making it part of your entertainment side of the world, which I think is brilliant. Like, why not take a passion you have like that and fold them together? That's I don't know. That's something that I don't know. There is kind of I don't know even how to describe this phenomenon, but that it is fun how that has happened for me, even outside of just like doing the podcast. Like we've worked on a late night video game focused show, like sort of like Conan, but late night. We've done sketches, so it's fun to at least have like a way that almost like how many kids growing up, their parents would be like, "Hey, you can't have a career in playing video games. Don't do it." But now people can actually do that. Exactly.
This is like my excuse to be like, "Well, see, sometimes I use it creatively. See." I can feel better about it.
What you do. I would give yourself credit for that. I think that is a version of it. Yeah, I don't know. I will though. If by the end of this podcast, I will take a recommendation from you if you have something that I should play or get into that'll get me. I don't know. I will definitely take a rec.
Okay. The last question I have for you before we move to break is there any video game from your whole life that you haven't mentioned today, whether it be something weird and obscure or another one you just forgot to bring up, that you want to shout out before we take a little break?
A video game that I really love, or just
or like a weird one that you just haven't brought up yet that you'd be, if we finish this recording, you'd be like, I can't believe I didn't bring this up.
Sure, yeah. I'm going to mention Icy Tower, which was... did you ever play this?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm just tickled by the name for whatever reason.
It was totally just one of those things on a PC that was... it was like one of those eternal... You're just a guy jumping up levels,
yes.
And you're trying to not fall. It was a precursor to like probably a lot of iPhone games that now exist.
Yeah.
Endlessly addictive, but I just remember playing that for I don't know how many worthless hours, but... Yeah, I played that, Icy Tower.
It sounds very similar to a Nintendo property called Ice Climbers. I wonder if it's like the same or similar, because it is like two little characters jumping up to a higher ledge and then avoiding some enemies.
Avoiding some of these higher and higher ledges, and you can do little tricks like roll off and like get a higher jump than before, stuff like that. But it was just like, it's just one of those endlessly addictive, very similar to those endless runner games people have on their phones now, which I can never install on my phone.
You know better. Icy Tower. Well, hey, I'm glad I opened it up for that last one. But Dhruv, thanks for giving us a window into your general history with games. That was really fun. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get into all things Jak II, so I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. Connor McCabe still here, about to get into all things Jak II with Dhruv Uday Singh. Dhruv, welcome back.
Thank you. Call Me By Your Game. Call Me By Your Game.
Is that the Lil Nas X song?
That's right.
I love it. Not the first person to bring that up on the show, but I love it every time it happens. Like I said before the break, we're going to get into a little history and context of what this game is before we talk about your personal experience with it. And if you want to jump in anytime to add something on, you've got the green light.
Great.
All right. Without further ado, here I go. Jak II is an action-adventure video game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation 2 in the year 2003. It is the second game in the Jak and Daxter series and a sequel to the first, obviously. It was followed by Jak III in the following year in 2004. They really pumped those things out back then. The game features new weapons and devices, new playable areas, and a storyline that picks up after the events of the first. The player takes the dual role of protagonists Jak and Daxter. I also want to add, specifically getting off my monologue, that this game was known for sort of like putting a badass coat of paint over the first Jak and Daxter. Like, that's the first one is a very, for those who haven't played it, is a very, like, classic 3D platformer from the era. It's very, and this game has funny moments too, but it was very comedy focused. It was very silly. The colors were bright. The main characters were just kind of like everyman type heroes. But Jak in this game, they just like, it was probably had a lot to do with the influence of like the Grand Theft Auto series of everything has to be badass, everything has to be like hard edged. But I wanted to be sure to include that. The game received critical acclaim upon release. Critics applauded it for being very polished in nearly every department, with many agreeing it was one of the best games on the console. Some criticism, however, was directed at the checkpoint systems, the darker tone which I was talking about, and the high difficulty. And the game is notorious among gamers for being one of the most difficult games on the PlayStation 2. That's all the context that I've got to share about it. Before we dive into your history, did you want to add something on, or are we ready to jump in?
What is Jak? What are they? Are they some kind of rodent hybrid? That's my memory of it, but I can't remember exactly what animal / humanoid thing they are.
So Jak is like I'm sure they have a species name or like a race in this game, but they're, to the best of my knowledge, they're sort of like elf-like creatures.
Right.
But he has like, I know, really, really big ears. His hair's a little different. And Daxter was the same. I mean, they're from the same sort of like group of people, but in the first game, he gets like kicked into some like dark precursor energy and gets turned into an otzel, which is a cross between an otter and a weasel. So he's a little, that's why he's kind of this little rodent looking thing.
Right. That's what I'm thinking of. I knew there was one rodent-like creature. Great. Yeah. Okay. Great. Just clarifying that.
Our comic relief Daxter.
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into your history. I know we got to preview it a few months ago, but I'm just going to act as if I don't know a thing. Dhruv, how did you come to play this game for the first time?
So my freshman year of college, like I said, I moved here from Bombay in India, and my freshman year of college was at USC. And there was I was going through the sometimes difficult, sometimes interesting, but also rewarding process of both assimilating to a new culture on the other side of the planet and college, that whole thing of adulthood, growing it was a triple transformation of going from a boy into an adult, of going from home to a completely new place, and then of course culturally changing. And there were, in this like tumult of different emotions and experiences, that in my dorm there happened to be everyone had a shared dorm room except for this one kid, Mike, because his roommate was kicked out for a variety of dishonorable reasons. And so because he had his own room, we'd hang out a ton in that dorm room, and that involved watching movies or just shooting the shit or sometimes playing video games. And he happened to have Jak II, or happened to get Jak II, and we started playing it over there. And the way I was acquainted with it already brings up a lot of mild trauma in my body, even talking about
God,
it.
I'm sorry.
Because we played it for, I want to say it was at least 60 hours straight from start to finishing the game. And when I say we, I mean mostly me, and then this one other guy, Kyle, who was kind of a bully who would come and take over the game and not let anyone play for hours and then leave because the challenges were too difficult when he got stuck. But played this game, for a long time. Maybe 3 people were in and out of that dorm room.
Yes.
But I played it again with no sleep, no food, almost no water, to the point where, but we did finish the game, which was unbelievably difficult by the end of it, especially in that state. We ordered a bunch of Thai food right at the end of it, gorged that. I went to sleep for like a whole 26 hours, like a whole day didn't exist for me because I was asleep. Had terrible dreams the whole time about being in the Jak and Daxter world of the video game, and then vowed from that point that I would never own a console or play a video game again because it's gonna fuck my life up. So that's my experience with it, and I've regrettably, again, I've I've changed my. I'm looking at my PlayStation there, sitting there right now. Obviously, I have a different relationship with that now as an adult with more control on my life. But also, I am scared still about like getting sucked in that hole, so I don't let myself play games for very long.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone had a sort of video game bender like experience like that makes a lot of sense to me. Why you were very cautious from that moment moving forward, and strayed away from it.
Because some people have a video game bender lifestyle. They're okay with it. I think some of them are also very functional about it. It's not a problem for them. I think for me, I know my personality, and I know I'm like, if I point my obsessions at something the wrong way, I can get sucked into that thing. Now I have, I consider myself pretty obsessed with comedy and what I do is my performing and all this and writing. But I feel like those are obsessions I choose, and I can like I'm okay with getting in a hole of like working, whereas this feels like it's out of my control, so I'm scared of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of people that I talk about, whether or not they've come on the show, but when video games come up, many people express a similar fear of something like that happening, especially people who know themselves really well, like you've been describing. So that's, not a surprise. It makes a lot of sense. But for this game too, what do you remember? Was this a decision that you all had made? Like, we're going to just play this game till we beat it, or did someone just start playing it and it spiraled from there?
The latter.
Okay.
One. Yeah, someone just started playing it, and we started playing it late at night. It was probably already 2 a.m. or something, and then it just kept going. We got a little obsessed with beating it. I don't remember it being that fun, if I'm being totally honest with you. I thought it was a nicely developed world. Yes. I also got in a little bit of video game enthusiast soup by saying this on. I talked a little bit about. I did this show on Dropout called Dirty Laundry, where it's a drinking game show, and you're supposed to like have confessions. And one of the confessions was I played a game for like 70 hours straight, or whatever it was, 60, 70 hours. And we talked about it, and I think I disparagingly said it wasn't even that good a game. It was kind of this dog shit fucking experience, and it got of all the communities you don't want to irk, it's people who are fans of a specific video game.
Oh yeah,
because I got a lot of comments and DMs about how it's actually a very good game, and I agree, it probably is. My experience is heavily tainted by the negative overall addiction spiral that this was
Sure. Yeah. But of course, gamers with the capital G still had to slip into your DMs and like let you know what they really think about it.
Yes, and I get it. Listen, I was loose-lipped also on Dropout, which is a platform that has a lot of gamer fans. It's also, I think, not only gamer fans, they probably had people who made the game watch those shows. So I take it back. I apologize, Jak II community. It's probably a great game. My memories are just very much affected and tainted by the bad experience of holding P for 3 straight days and playing a game.
Yeah.
That's why.
Oh my gosh. Is there like a moment in the game that is like seared in your mind to this day, or have you like washed that clean?
I've probably washed clean all the specifics. I do remember the general vibe of the little beams of light as he spins around. I remember that. I remember like dark kind of waterways you can get on little boats and kind of be off. I remember these kind of like urban decay city environments in certain parts of it. So I remember little flashes of memories of it. And you know what? It was a well-made game and environment and all of that. But I think I don't have any specific moments on it. I do remember some challenges being very hard to beat, like later on in the game. Extremely hard to get past certain parts of the game.
Yeah. Despite all the things you're saying about it are things I've heard this game described in that way too. Like, especially the environments, it's so drab, it's so dreary. I don't think if this game was like shiny and happy that you would have had a positive experience with it because of the situation, like the situation you found yourself in. But I'm sure like the drab and dreary environment, the dark tones maybe didn't help either.
Have you played it?
I've only played the first one. Okay. I've never played Jak II. I have watched someone stream it before, and this was a streamer, a former guest of the show, friend Janet Garcia. She grew up loving this game, and when her and her brother streamed it, they were having a miserable time in several sections of it because of either the difficulty of the challenge or just how finicky some things would be. But if you, I can imagine if you were determined or obsessive, like you would just be like, I'm going to throw myself against this frustration until I conquer it.
I think that's what it was. I think it was a time in my life when I didn't have any actual missions that were worth conquering.
Sure.
But this was one. You know what I mean? I was 18 and I was like, I don't know, the whole world felt overwhelming to me. I was in this new country, new culture, and this was like one little thing I could control and conquer.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I was also like, I came to US, like, I had a lot of great experiences there and lots of great people, but it was also, it's a very like fratty university.
Definitely.
Which in that, especially in that era, even now probably, it's not coming as a fucking Indian kid to this new world. I didn't exactly feel super welcome in a lot of those spaces. So I think this was something I was like, oh, I can conquer this stupid thing. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I was still kind of undecided on everything felt amorphous. So you're really putting me in the therapist couch here, but I feel like I feel like probably some part of it had to do with like, here is something that I can start to finish conquer.
Yeah, that's relatable too in a lot of ways. And I've heard other people describe experiences with games similarly, or like, this is not the same thing at all, but Amanda and I were talking about this today where when I'm feeling unproductive or like on a day where I'm just creatively not flowing or I'm having trouble finishing something, like going on a walk for me can also feel like I have accomplished something, which don't get me wrong, it's good to get out and get some sun. The exercise is great, but it almost too fills a place where there's not a void, but an absence of like following something that you really want to do, maybe is the way I'll put it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and always I have the same thing. When you have those days, sometimes a walk is absolutely a win. Like it's better than nothing.
Yes.
You get that shit in. Yeah.
True. Literally did that today, and it helped a lot. Big time.
Man, walks are great. Yeah.
Gosh, a high recommendation for walks. This is unrelated, and I'm sorry to get us off on a tangent. Have you heard Alan McLeod's Walkabout podcast?
No, Alan McLeod of UCB.
Yes.
Alan? Yeah. No.
I think it's called Walkabout or Walking About, but it's just a great show where he goes on walks with comedian friends and goes down like roads of conversation and talks about where they're going on these walks, whether it's in a hilly area of Pasadena or downtown and checking out little things. So because we talked about walks, I was like, I'm going to give you a rec.
I'm going to check that out. I'm putting that on my list on my podcast app. That'd be great.
Yeah, he's really charming on it too. So
yeah, he's a very funny dude. Walking about. Okay, here we go.
There we are. I love this we don't have to talk about this too much more. But I'm gonna do just a slight more amount of probing into this before we finish. Looking back to at this moment, was there, outside of the game specifics, was there a memory from that night that sticks out most in your head, whether it be like finishing it and being finally done or an exhaustion? I'm curious.
Yes, absolutely. There was one moment. I might have said his name earlier, and I hope not. But okay, I'll just say his first name from now on, so no one looks at. The guy's a nice dude. The guy whose dorm it was, who had the solo dorm, Mike. He got used to this being kind of the social nexus for a few of us in that dorm, because he was just like, this is my dorm room. He had gone out, I think, at some point in that night, or maybe it was the second night of this game, I don't know, but he'd gone out, come back very drunk from like a house party, and like passed out on his bed, but we were sitting on the floor in front of his bed continuing to play the game.
Yes.
And at some point, it must have been like 5 a.m., very drunkenly, there were 3 of us sitting, I'm pretty sure, playing the game at this point, handing the controller back and forth.
Yeah.
He got up very drunkenly, the room was dark, we turned off all the lights apart from the game. He stumbled over to his door, opened the door drunkenly, so suddenly there was light from the hallway bathing him in silhouette, turned towards the door and pulled his pants down and started peeing on his door because he thought he'd walked into the bathroom.
Oh my God.
He was so drunk. So we just watched him in silhouette while we played this game, just pee on his own door. And then like his head went forward and hit his forehead hit the door, and he just like lay there back in his drunken sleep until we woke him up and like tried to get him back in bed.
Oh my gosh.
And then, of course, we finished playing the game like a bunch of disgusting pigs with his pee all over the floor in front of his door. And unfortunately, Mike, for the rest of the year, was called Puddles, which is a tragedy. Poor old Mike. So I remember that moment. That stood out a lot.
How could you not? And it truly is really leaving an impression how locked in or obsessed you guys were, for lack of a better term, that like not even... I mean, hunger, like tiredness, or an event as shocking as that could throw you off your game.
Yes, and that's why I cannot let myself play another fucking game. Because if it's gonna take over my sense of propriety and what's right and wrong and smell and everything to that extent, yeah, it was crazy. That was one moment. I mean, I don't know. I do remember the eating chicken satay from the only Thai restaurant open after like 60 hours of no food, being one of the fastest meals I ever ate. That was also so satisfying.
Probably just felt so ravenous at that point.
Yes.
You maybe had already even described it as that. Awesome. I have two final questions for you before we finish this thing off. The first is I like totally lost my train of thought, and that's being a great interview on a podcast, is I'm listening so well that I forget what I want to ask you.
I can guess your question. Was it, do I want to come over and play Jak II for 3 straight days?
I have it set up here for you. And if it helps that I piss on my own floor to get you in the experience, I'll do it.
Please.
I did remember my 2 questions now. The first question is mostly just about that year at school too. Do you remember, I know this was a part of like a time in your life, that freshman year, where there was a lot that was new and you were figuring out a lot. Do you remember how the year ended, or how your journey even at school changed? Did you have a period where you sort of figured out while you were there a little more of the direction you were hoping for?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it did really until my junior year start to feel some, and part of that was just the assimilating process and stuff. I was going to classes, I was figuring out stuff. I had some nice friends whose company I enjoyed. And I had a couple of friends also who were from Bombay, who'd also moved out to LA. So we hung out a little bit, but all of them have moved back to, a lot of them, not all of them, have moved back to India. But I think it was like in my junior year when I started to get a sense of self-awareness and self-confidence, and some of that was age as well. Sure. You're like 20 by that point, 19, 20, so you're like already kind of cresting into proper adulthood a little bit. I think I'd had some confidence. I think I also started the weird assimilation tango where you're kind of, it's a big identity dance, figuring out who you are. And everyone has some version of this, I think, especially at that age. You're doing some sort of identity dance from when you're a teenager sheltered in your parents' home to being an adult out in the world yourself. There is always some sort of negotiation with what is my identity. And I think it was around that time when I started to be like, okay, I am a mongrel. I'm kind of this is what I am, but I'm okay with that. I kind of like I like feeling bicultural. I like feeling like I'm a little chameleonic, but that's just what it is. That's what it means to be this way. Yeah. I think I started to feel that. I didn't really, until much later, start to really understand myself a little better, because you're also wearing a mask for a long time, especially at that age. It was only many, many years later, and through a lot of therapy and a lot of improv, a lot of performing and all this stuff, that I started to feel more centered in myself, which is still an ongoing battle. It's one that never ends, that we're always pursuing. But that is exactly.
Thanks for sharing that, though. That is really cool to hear. Were you?
Was your question more about like, did I get good at video games, and I've turned all of these into psychoanalytic?
Thankfully, I knew at this point that wouldn't be the question I would ask, considering the fallout with you and games. But no, you answered exactly what I was looking to probe into. So thank you. This is sort of tangential, but were you a theater major at USC, or did you find performing later in life?
No, I wasn't a theater major. I studied creative writing,
Gotcha.
And then did screenwriting. I did a lot of the film classes, like the critical studies classes. I did take one improv class, but it wasn't really improv. It was not like a clowning person, but I remember feeling very in the moment and enjoying it, even though it wasn't really improv as we know it at all. I didn't. I wish I had been, because when I was there, a lot of like my now contemporaries at UCB, like Dan Lippert and all these dudes, were all there doing improv.
Wow.
Like, in the improv school. I just wasn't part of that at all. Justin Michael, but I only got into improv some years after college. When I took it, I was going through kind of a low period with a relationship and all this stuff, and I was like, I remember feeling very in the moment in that class. I should do that just for the sake of being in the moment more, and then fell in love with it very quickly.
Wow.
And,
cool. We don't always talk about all these millions of improvisers on the show, like their journey, but it felt like there was some connective tissue between leaving, finishing school. So thanks for letting me ask about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, lastly, just to close this thing out, if you had to wrap up and put a nice little bow on the place that Jak II held for you in like a sentence or two, how would you say that? Okay.
Oh God, I want to pick my words carefully now, 'cause I don't want this to be.
I can hear the dropout people coming in to listen to this episode.
Yes, who I have nothing but love for. I just feel like I don't want to taint the actual game based on my narrow experience of the game. It's a little bit like being like, I don't know. It's like someone who's been an alcoholic in an alcoholic spiral, being like, wine is the most garbage tasting thing on earth. No, it's not. People love wine, But I don't. I guess I would sum it up by saying, it was a occasionally enjoyable, wonderfully made, cautionary tale filled with shame and minor trauma. That's what I would call.
Well done. Still managed to have diplomacy in your answer, despite your experience. But I appreciate that.
I'm trying to.
I've got, like I told you, I got a couple of post-show segments to present. But thank you for coming on to share that story. I know there's a lot going on there, so I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing about that today.
Thank you, Connor. Thanks for having me. And will you name a video game I should play? And I will actually commit to playing it, because I want to play something and tell you what it was like to play. What's something I should check out?
Here's what I'll do: is that I will give that. I'll ask you off pod and give you some recs, but I'll give you the 3 that I prepared today just based on this game. But they're probably not going to be great fits.
That's fine.
But I will actually get you a good answer on that.
Okay, great, yeah. Perfect.
But the first segment to finish the show today is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, and that's just where I share a fun fact with you about the game you brought on today. This fun fact comes from the YouTube channel Did You Know Gaming, about Jak II. And the fun fact, the way I titled this is Jak II is the first time Jak had a voice. So coincidentally, in the first Jak and Daxter game, despite all the voice acting that's in it, Jak never speaks, probably because he's a player character. Like, this happens in a lot of games, like Link in The Legend of Zelda never talks, Crash Bandicoot never said anything. But I'll dive into this fact really quick before we wrap it up. Strangely enough, like I already said, Jak didn't have a voice actor in the first game, but was approached by the development team as more of a silent protagonist. But for Jak II, he was finally given a voice, and he would be voiced by the actor Mike Irwin, who would go on to reprise his role in Jak III. So I don't know what it was about going into this second game that they were like, let's take our silent protagonist and give him a voice, but it continued through the series. Anyway, that's really all there was to that one. It was a pretty simple one. That'll lead us into the final segment of the podcast, the game recommendations. Now, Dhruv, this is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where I'm going to treat Jak II as your passionate summer fling in Italy. And because that relationship's not going to work out and you're very heartbroken at this time, it's my goal to get you back out there dating again. So I've got 3 potential flings to set you up with that all have a little in common with him.
It was my toxic college boyfriend. It was that.
In a way,
toxic
right?
Freshman, yeah.
So here are 3 recs for you. If you want to play the big influence that turned the Jak and Daxter series into this dark tone, I'll recommend Grand Theft Auto 3. It was the game that like really caused not just this development team, but many of the time to make their games GTA-ified, as they'll say. If what you liked about this game is that you liked it being a classic like platformer series with a dynamic duo, I'll recommend the game Ratchet and Clank. Have you ever heard of that one? It's also of the same era, kind of.
Oh, okay, no. Ratchet and Clank? No.
Ratchet and Clank, which actually maybe you would enjoy the new Ratchet and Clank for your PS5 now that I think about it. But it's more of a... There's platforming, like all the jumping around and stuff you do in Jak and Daxter, but it's kind of like a third-person shooter as well. So they've got different gadgets and gizmos that they use. And lastly, if Dhruv, this dark tone that Jak II took was just too harsh of a pivot, and you want, instead of a game to go badass, you want it to go turn into the most baby version possible, I'll recommend to you a game called Yoshi's Crafted World. It's literally a video game starring Yoshi, who I'm sure you're familiar with. And the whole aesthetic of the game is just little paper craft and cutesy like arts and crafts stuff. Cute.
Okay.
So you know what? If you're just like sick on that dark tone, then we'll make it the most childish version possible. To recap, we had Grand Theft Auto 3, Ratchet and Clank, and Yoshi's Crafted World. That'll do it for the Rex, and that'll bring us to the end of the show. So once again, Dhruv, thanks for taking the time to do this today. It was so great hearing from you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was a delight. Appreciate it.
You betcha. I know we plugged your show earlier, but would you tell us about your show one more time on your way out?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Check out Deepak Chopra's Quantum Manifestation Experience. You can come, you can bring things you want to manifest in your life, and you'll have LA's greatest performers act them out. You'll have there'll be manifestation rituals, there'll be live tabla music, there'll be lights and meditations and all kinds of fun, freaky, woo-woo stuff along with a bunch of great comedy. May 22nd, 8:30 p.m., I believe, at the UCB Theater. I think that's a Thursday. Please come on out. I would love to see you there.
I love it. Like I said, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then all this crap that I'm about to plug right now will be in the show notes as well for you, listener. So without further ado, here I go. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his great work on Instagram, the handle in the show notes. This show is produced, edited, and the original music is done by Jeremy Schmidt. You can find him and give him some support for the work he puts into this show by listening to his podcast, Video Games, a comedy show, more of a comedy-focused roundtable style show with a bunch of fun. You can also follow this podcast all over social media on Blue Sky, Instagram, and on YouTube. If you'd like a video version of the show, you can follow the network at Super NPC Radio as well. Myself on all those platforms, including my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/consiskool69. And lastly, is that if you like the conversations I have with people about video games and you want to get more video game podcasts because you're just insatiable, you've listened to all the stuff we've done and you want more, check us out on Patreon. That's a place where you can support the network and get bonus podcasts. We are currently doing our Resident Evil 4 Games Club, so by the time this episode comes out, in just 2 days, that's kicking off for a certain tier on there, but it'll come out for free for everyone as well. And yeah, there's a link to that in the show notes too. That's going to do it for another episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next one.